Aloha! I'm Ariana Ayu of arianaayu.com and welcome to my temporary office in Hawaii. I am answering some questions today that have come in through Facebook groups and some other social media aspects and things that I'm a part of. So I wanted to answer a question today that came in from Betsy Trapasso. And Betsy's question is about, well, I'll tell you a little bit. Betsy says she's struggling with her branding, and I'm looking at my notes here. She says she's struggling with her branding, although as I'm reading her message, I think what she's really struggling with is the marketing message. So I'll tell you a little bit about it, and then I'll give you my thoughts. Betsy works with people who are dying, and people keep trying to steer her away, she says, from words like death and dying, and are encouraging her to use words like passing and transition. And so she's wondering about this. She also, another part of what she does is she helps people who are living to live with no regrets, so that they can, or to live in a way so that they can die with no regrets. So that is a very noble and wonderful purpose. So I just want to say, first off, Betsy, great job. It's so great to have people in the world who are doing that. It's really valuable work. So I'm really glad to know that you're doing that. And I'm glad that you asked this question. This is a great question, because really what it's about is, how do we deal with things that are uncomfortable and things that may make other people uncomfortable? How do we speak about them? So now you said you're struggling with your branding, but the way that I work with branding is really about your essence. It is the experience that people have when they interact with you. And when you are somebody who is the face of your business, and most of the time that they're working, they're going to be interacting with you directly, it's really, your brand is really about your personal brand. There are the other things that factor in, such as when you're talking about a business brand, like your logo and your color schemes, but all of those are really secondary. They're just other pieces that are used to create that emotional connection that you have with your clients and your prospective clients. So what you're asking about really here is about marketing message. It's how do you speak about what you do, especially when what you do is something that makes people uncomfortable. So that's a really good question, and that applies to a lot of other areas. I've heard the same question come from people who work with sacred sexuality and with sexual healing, because how do you speak about that when, people may get the wrong idea? And so it can be tricky to figure out how to do your marketing, how to message what you do, what are the proper words to explain what you do, and to stay true to what you do, and also not offend people or not scare people away. So I want to tell you a little bit about my history so you understand where I'm coming from with my answer to your question, Betsy. Now, I am a registered nurse, and I've worked with all spectrums. I've worked with life and death and everything in between. And part of my experience has been, as far as dealing with death, has been working in a pediatric hospice as part of my nursing program, and also in helping as a labor and delivery nurse delivering babies who were, the term that was used was not viable. They were pregnancies that couldn't work, but sometimes they were far enough along to where the mother had to actually give birth. It wasn't just a miscarriage. And so these were very difficult situations and things that people are very afraid to talk about. So my perspective is of someone who's not afraid to talk about it, which I think, Betsy, is something that we have in common, because if this is the work that you do, then chances are you've found a way to talk about it and to deal with it, because otherwise you couldn't last in that kind of an environment for very long, because it would be way too emotionally difficult. So the way that I approach things like this is to really go back to your brand. And I know I said you weren't asking about brand, you were asking about marketing message, but I'll show you how those things tie together. So your brand is the experience that your clients have with you. It is the emotional connection that you create. And your brand is also, when I think about a personal brand, it's something that really calls you forward to be the best version of yourself that you can be in every moment. And so there are a lot of things that go into that, but the core of it is the essence of who you are. So when you deal with people who are dying, how do you deal with them? How do you talk about it? So that's the first thing that I would have you look at, is how do you talk about it with your clients? So when you have somebody that's dying, do you sugarcoat it and do you say, well, when you pass away, or do you go, when you die, here's what you can expect, or here's what I've seen in other patients who are dying? Chances are you probably talk about it in more frank terms, like the second way that I spoke. Because when you're dealing with death and dying, it's a reality. And if somebody is working with you to make sure that they're having a good death experience, then chances are that they're talking about it in some way or another, or they want to talk about it, which is why they're working with you, and not just waiting till it's almost over and calling the priest for last rites. So that's something that I would have you keep in mind, is there's a reason that they're coming to you specifically, and by choosing to work in a field that means that you have to discuss things that are difficult, you have to be comfortable with saying what you do. I'm assuming because you asked the question that all of this advice that people have been giving you to use words like passing and transition has not made you feel comfortable, because if it was advice that worked for you, then you wouldn't have asked the question. So, my instinct here is telling me that you feel the same way about this that I do, that it is about death, and it is about dying, and that that's something that we have to deal with, that that's a reality. And for the people that you're working with, it is a reality because, and it's not just a reality in the sense that we're all going to die, it's a reality in a very real personal sense. So, with that being the case, why shy away from it? You have to look at what feels right for you, but for me, I would use the words, because I think that's what you're about when you do that sort of thing. And, you know, I don't know you personally, so I can't speak to what is your style and how you would say that. But what you're really asking about is, how do you craft your marketing message? How do you say to people when they ask, what do you do? How do you say that to them so that they don't run away? Or so that they don't kind of get this like wall that goes up and blank stare and go, I'm going to go to the bar, you know? So, because that's the question. How do you speak about that? If you're at a cocktail party and somebody says, oh, Betsy, what do you do? And you say, well, I work with people who are dying. That's a big conversation starter. That shuts everything down. And so you have to think about how do you say what you do in a way that is really authentic to who you are, but also in a way that it allows people to engage with you. And that's what marketing is really about. And crafting your marketing message is really just about how do you say what you do in a way that engages people who need your services or who want your services. So, if you were going to say, I'm going to pretend that I was you, and let's say somebody comes up to me at a cocktail party and says, oh, Betsy, what do you do? Here's something that I might say in return to that. Well, I'm so glad you asked. What I do is I work with people who are dying, and I help them to end their life in a way that brings them acceptance and peace and comfort, so that they feel like they have had not only a good life, but a good death, and so that their family feels really good about that as well. And the other thing that I do, because of my experience and expertise in working with people who are dying, I also help people who are living to live their life so that they can die when it's their time with no regrets and feel really good about the life they've lived. And that's something that people will have a conversation with. Maybe not everybody. There are some people who will shy away from what you do no matter how perfectly you word it. And that's okay, because those people are not your clients. But when you take what you do and you speak about it in a way that combines the difficult part with the result that you create, which is the hope and the comfort and that peace and that feeling of having a good death, when you speak about those things together and you really combine that, then what you're doing is you're giving something for people to feel good about. And that's what you want to do in a conversation. You want them to feel good about what you do. And so, because you feel good about what you do, otherwise I'm guessing you wouldn't do it. Because that's not a field that you get into by accident. You don't just stumble across the road and go into the community college and take a class that says how to deal with people who are dying. It doesn't work that way. You do this because you're called to on a very, very deep personal level. And so I say, in your marketing message, stay true to who you are. And use the words that you would use for your clients. Use the things that you say when a prospective client comes up to you and says, I think I need your help. What would you say to them? If somebody says to you, my loved one is dying and I don't know what to do with it, how can you help me? What would you say to that person? And then use that to craft your marketing message. Because your marketing message it's really key to all of your marketing. It's your key message, the main point about what you do. And when you know how to speak about that in a way that engages people, and that engages the right people, the people that you want to work with, well then, that's your marketing. It's just creating that connection. So I hope this has been helpful, not only for you, Betsy, but for all of the people out there who are working in areas that are traditionally difficult. And when you're working with things that people are afraid of, and people are hesitant to deal with, you have to stay true to yourself. And that's staying true to your brand. And then the marketing message, that's the outflow. That's the key piece that helps you to express what you do. Your brand, they will feel that, and they will understand your brand by interacting with you. They will get the confidence and the personality and the color or the lack of color, whatever it is that makes you, you. And then all of those sort of periphery pieces, like your logo and the colors that you use on your website, those sorts of things, which are part of branding, but not really the essence of your brand. When you have your marketing message, that's how they understand what you do. When your brand is how you do it. It's the feeling and the connection that you have with people. So I hope that was helpful. Again, it was a pleasure to answer your question. That is a great question. And Betsy, I love what you're doing. Stay out there and feel really good about what you're doing, because it is incredibly important and incredibly needed on the world right now. So to you and to everyone else who is out there listening, may all of my love and joy be with you in your births and your deaths and in all parts of your luxurious life.